People who live in urban environments.
So
The Honorable Jay.
oh, don't hear that very often.
Yeah,
So,
right, not very honorable.
given the time crunch, we'll call the meeting to order. First motion of business is to approve the meetings from our May 30th.
I'll motion.
Second,
Thank you. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have approved minutes. I presume the next order of business are some of the data
Yes.
the executive director discussion items.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to point out that workforce housing, while it is a commonly used terminology, there is no formal federal guidance as to what defines workforce housing. I think around the table, I've seen in some policy papers that it's between 80% and 120% of area median income. And of course, that changes based on the jurisdiction that you're in. And around the table, we've talked about how there's a fair degree of a relatively affordable workforce housing in this community. It's just kind of maxed out in terms of the inventory. It's anything that's not luxury housing that's affordable to essentially a median income earner. So,
Which also would be a very nebulous term, right? Luxury.
Exactly, right. And even the HUD guidelines that drive how COMIDA determines affordable housing are representative of area median income metrics that cover the whole 5-county MSA. So it's again, good vocabulary word is nebulous. Workforce housing is one that lacks a formal definition. So a study, our hope would be that a housing study commissioned by COMIDA might elucidate what's the definition of workforce housing for Monroe County specifically, so that we can formalize those expectations into our policy as it shakes out following the recommendations of a study.
So just to put some more meat on, we talked a lot about studies. How do we go about doing that? Like, do we have to put an RFP out there? I'm assuming we would, but do we should probably, within the RFP, we have to have some guidelines. So is that something you guys would start to take a look and say, here's what we would like? And
we've been meeting already, and we've kind of looked at some other IDAs and what their RFPs looked like. So we're going to come up with something.
Do we have some thoughts locally who might do the survey the study for us?
There are a handful of firms that have done this type of work for other IDAs in the state of New York, one being MRB Group, with whom we are contracted for our cost-benefit analysis work. Another being, I think, Camoin Associates is another. Certainly some of the planning and engineering, any consulting firm that works with housing nonprofits might.
So they could be anywhere, they don't need to be here.
Well, we'd prefer to work with a local contractor.
Right.
That's something we'd like to work with governance and ultimately the full board on.
MRB is the largest, probably.
yeah, and I think it
Most
makes
likely.
sense because it'll be their front yard, not
Right,
they'll understand the nuances of
Right.
the market. So Allison, you guys are working on that, and maybe for the next governance,
Sure.
we can at least have a draft.
Yeah.
I think that would be great, and just
Absolutely.
and as you're going through it, if you want to throw out to the governance committee, hey, here's kind of our objectives, so that we can comment on an email chain. So maybe have one less round of because I know
the RFPs are like there's a whole bunch of all the gobbledygook that you got to put in all of them. There's really like one core paragraph.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Really the scope of the study.
Wayne County and Genesee County, our neighbors to the east and west, their IDAs have recently commissioned housing studies, so we can easily grab those RFPs for consumption with the board. for guidance and other examples as well.
Yeah, we'll shamelessly take whatever we can.
Yeah.
You're right over
I
here,
just want to
Troy.
mention,
Troy, you're right over here.
like, I just want to mention, like, this week, we had a Section 8 situation come up. Same thing I discussed with you before, so someone else. Now,
Into one of your complexes.
yeah, older lady fell. So I had somebody in the office reach out to Section 8, just to get a little bit of an education. So Section 8, the person she spoke to at Section 8, my office, they asked, how long is the average person on the waiting list for Section 8? She said, we have not gotten more than 5% off the waiting list in 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
How's that possible?
We don't
How big
have
is the
any.
waiting list? Did they give you a
She wouldn't,
sense?
she wouldn't
It's
tell us.
miles long, and then when they open up a handful of slots, obviously that's something to celebrate, but it doesn't even make a dent.
So you're familiar, so,
Yeah.
terrible. This is
It's very terrible.
It's terrible. So I would love to see us try to incentivize developers to build some Section 8. I think that would be the best thing we could do for the county.
So it's a supply issue?
Yeah, there's not enough.
So, and recently, HTR, the state agency that provides the recommendation for housing projects to get tax credits, has come out and said, we are not going to provide tax credits to housing projects done by IDAs when it's a rehab. If it's new construction, maybe they will. I need to look at the guidance. But the state is making it very difficult for IDAs to participate in Section 8 housing right now, like Andrews Terrace, like Cedarwood,
Terrible.
Keeler Park, because of the volume cap. So if you recall, when we do a Section 8 housing project, we have to have volume cap in the amount equal to the par amount of the bonds that we're going to issue to finance. And there's so much pressure on volume cap that the state issuers want to retain it for themselves, and therefore there's not much coming out of the statewide reserve for entities like us.
And I understand the
So Rachel-
Andrews Terrace project drove that policy
Correct.
shift.
There was
right?
a lot of consternation downstate that this IDA received so much volume cap for Andrews Terrace. And some pressure from downstate caused the state agencies to pull back on the ability of IDAs to do these wonderful projects like Sycamore Green that's sitting in our queue, unable to move forward because of the tax credit and volume cap issue.
So volume cap is just we can only have a certain number of bonds issued
So it's
by
a
the
it's a
state?
dollar amount that the state allocates to local agencies based on population. And for Monroe County, we typically get 30 million, and most of our bond deals are well in excess of that. So we put in a request to the statewide reserve to
grab
get
on it.
more,
Okay,
and we took a lot last year
Okay.
for 526 units of Section 8 housing in the city, and it did have some ripple effect. But
Okay.
we're fighting the good fight on that.
In order to answer your question, the problem's twofold. The older complexes in town need to be refurbished, because as I told you before, they're not as profitable. So developers tend to take their profit out and don't put money back in them. So that's a big issue. One that comes to mind is like Door in Greece, like they're just rough. And then there's a shortage. But that part of our community those people need to be taken care of. It's terrible.
So I guess it's probably not for the governments, but we probably should look at it is the structure appropriate? Should we be looking at new construction on this versus the rehab? Because you were saying that new construction is being totally funded for Section 8.
It is. A lot of state issuers are doing the new construction.
So I mean, are we putting our apples in the wrong barrel? Should we be looking at more new construction versus the rehab stuff that Sycamore Green and Andrews Terrace?
I think we try to do all of the above.
Right, you got to do all of the above, and you got to get developers that want to do it.
But if you got that cap issue,
Right.
it's only going to give you a certain amount, and we drew down 30 million for Andrews Terrace.
We did. We've used our allocation for 2024. So we would have to go to the state reserve as it is, and I don't think we'll get anything.
Norm, just my opinion,
Yeah.
I think you look at all of the above
Right.
and you lobby the state to
Right.
up the
Right.
caps.
Yep.
But we're I know, but we approved Sycamore Green last year.
But still, it was the right thing to do, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
Rachel, what's the process to try to get more dollars?
To get more volume cap, you used to go through the Regional Economic Development Council, and then they would make a recommendation to Empire State Development, who would then fulfill it. Now the requests are they're bypassing the regional councils and going straight to the state, I believe. And so we're not getting that recommendation anymore, which is, that's a problem for us.
So, Anna, anything else?
That just crystallizes that we're a little bit hamstrung when it comes to Section 8. A study would certainly help to unlock any additional options that an IDA of our size might have. But yeah, we would, for definition, for purposes of defining the parameters of workforce housing, we would probably look to a study and want to bless that definition as the governance committee and as the full board at some point.
And I would think that this is just bad optics if there are developers wanting to do it, and the state is putting up hindrances for them doing it. So I don't think we should let the cap prevent us from doing the right thing.
Right.
If we can have the developers, like I said, it's a bad look to put roadblocks.
Yeah.
Anna, could the study also, just take a part of the study and look at what is the actual demand for Section 8, the numbers, you said 3 years, but how's that list look? And what can happen to change that list? And is this list common for just the Rochester region, New York State region? How is it nationwide? I mean, I think that's a comparison we should probably have.
We could put that into the RFP, and I know that Legislator Mufucci is working with his colleagues. There's a housing committee in the legislature, is that correct?
Yeah, it really is more of a housing discussion.
A housing discussion, but I'm sure that, we could partner in some way with county government, because as you know, when it comes to Section 8, that's something that is administered obviously by the state and federal government. DHS is very much involved. If there's a component that would pertain to county policy and help direct county policy, I'm sure that's an area where we could.
I think it would be helpful if we did a needs assessment. What's the desired state? What's the current state? Subtract the current state from the desired state, that's what you need to do.
Right.
And what's the current percentage of Section 8 housing in the city versus in Monroe County?
Well, it's a county problem. It's not just a city problem.
Right, but I mean, isn't there a more dense Section 8 housing situation in the city?
Not really.
There's more distressed areas, no?
There's Section 8 in Greece, there's Section 8 in
I mean, I know that
Gates,
it's all over.
it's all over.
But is there more of it, in the city?
Concentrated in the city.
Yeah.
I don't think we have an answer for that.
No.
It's a good question.
I think the study would give us that information.
Right.
And we should look not only the city, but I think we look at census tracts, zip codes, and things of that nature.
The whole county, right.
Give you the actual data that you need.
I wondered if we knew how much.
And despite what's
already
going on in the state or nationally, we know we have a problem we need to deal with.
Yeah.
So despite what anybody else is doing, we know we can't have people that, are living in a bad situation because there's nowhere to go. It's just
And
not.
that should really be the primary focus.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I do want to get make sure we do review the the policy changes for the housing. So if there's no other points, if everybody's good, I'd like to move on to the next area. And Rachel, if you want to walk us through the changes and.
Sure. So the introductory paragraph has just been edited to make it very clear that this policy is specific to market rate housing as we flesh out the other types of housing, affordable and workforce housing like Anna spoke of. It states that applications for market rate housing will require 2 board meetings for consideration, and it leaves blank the policy start date of this policy, which we can talk about. We need feedback from the committee on when we want this policy to take effect. It increases the requirement from 10 to 20% based on our prior discussions. And then the compliance paragraph just makes it more clear that if you receive sales and mortgage tax, the compliance period will be 10 years that you'll be monitored, even though your sales tax benefit is probably for 18 months to 24 months. We'll continue to monitor for an additional, 8.5, 9 years. And that for projects receiving a partial real property tax abatement or a pilot, the IDA will monitor for the duration of the pilot agreement.
I think that captures succinctly our discussion. I guess I'll go around the room and see if there's any comments, questions, complaints about what Rachel just discussed.
I think the way we left it was at the 20% number at the end of the last meeting. So I guess we really want to see if that's what we want to do going forward.
She did a good job. No comments.
Let the record reflect.
Oh, please.
The effective date. Let's talk about that. Is there any reason we couldn't make this effective if we present this to the board for full approval today? We couldn't make this effective today. I know that there is one applicant in the pipeline. Would they be subject to this?
Typically, we haven't applied policies retroactively to projects where we've received an application. In this case, we have. When we originally adopted the housing policy in 22, it was effective immediately.
Okay.
In the fall of 22. So it's really at the board's discretion whether you want it to start immediately, give a time period, and then as to whether it should apply retroactively, that's also at the board's discretion. We've not done that before, but there's nothing legally wrong with that.
So let's unpack each one of those. My recommendation is let's make it effective immediately.
I agree.
So any objections to that? Okay. As far as retroactively, I don't think it's appropriate to do that.
Yeah.
Although I think we should go to the applicant and say, hey, there is a new policy. You may want to take that into consideration as you're looking at your application.
The policy as it's currently written grants the board discretion when it comes to looking at housing projects, and currently the 10% set aside. The agency in its sole and absolute discretion may elect to modify or waive. So it is written in our existing policy under which they did already apply that the board has that discretion to ask for a larger set aside.
Okay.
For this particular project.
Okay. So I didn't hear any objections to making it effective upon passing. So if there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to update our housing policy with the changes noted here that Rachel just reviewed.
So moved.
Thank you, Nora.
Second.
Second by Ann. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We will make a recommendation for approval of this policy to the board at today's meeting. Any other business before the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.